questions can be asked. And if the allegations are true, it isn't just this nominee in just this position. It's the precedent we set by doing this. It's what we say about other nominees. It's what we say about how business is conducted in critically important agencies of our government. And at a time when we watch the credibility of the United States and its intelligence information been drawn into question, where we had a Secretary of State go before the United Nations and make allegations about the weapons of mass destruction that we know are wrong today. And all the efforts we've made over the last number of months to get our intelligence operations right, the oversight right here, that in the midst of all of that, we nominate, or whether we promote an individual to a position who is engaged in behavior that I think all of us find deplorable.
Mr. Chairman,
and we have a number of witnesses who have corroborated what the allegations are. It seems to me we ought to take the act, at least of listening to these people, and then draw the own conclusions as to whether or not this individual deserves to be confirmed.
Let me inquire of the Senator. My understanding was that in addition to Senator Biden's motion for closed sessions, the senator from Connecticut would make a proposal to postpone the vote. Is that the senator's intent? And if so, is the senator prepared to proceed with his motion?
Yeah, leave it up for a second, Mr. Chairman. I don't hear what this have to say. I mean, the idea would be the purpose of delaying so we could draw some of these witnesses for us, give Mr. Bolton a chance to come back and answer these allegations. And if it turns out that we're right and he's wrong, you ought to know that. If we're wrong and he's right, we ought to know that as well. It seems to me we're going to find that out.
The chair is prepared to entertain the senator's motion, but the chair would simply observe that many senators, perhaps not all in the committee, have heard a great deal about Mr. Bolton, his conduct and the charge that you've suggested and the relationships, and that a majority of senators are prepared to vote on the nomination. So I would entertain in comedy to the senator that if he wishes to make his motion to postpone, that he make that motion so we can vote on that and dispose of that issue. Otherwise, I think we should proceed to vote on the nomination.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
why wouldn't he make that? Why wouldn't he make that motion if he's going to make it at the end of the debate?
Well, my answer to the senator is I'm proposing. Therefore, if he doesn't wish to make the motion, then we have a vote on the nomination.
You're proposing to vote now and cut off the debate?
Yes. I think
well, the Senate went out until 5 o'clock for the purpose of this committee to meet.
Well,
and it's now 10 minutes of 4.
Respond to the senator. We've had vigorous debate already.
Mr. Chairman,
issues that have been
Mr. Chairman, we haven't
had vigorous debate, Mr. Chairman.
We had a couple of vigorous statements, Mr. Chairman.
You have to contrast this when Holbrooke was nominated to the UN and when Negroponte was nominated to the UN. We confronted a lot of allegations about both. We took months to work through those allegations very carefully. And at the end of that process, we concluded that they didn't warrant, that they didn't rise to the level of blocking the nominations, and we moved ahead on those nominations. And I think it stood the nominee in very good stead as a consequence. Now, Bolton came to us when? The middle of March. So we're talking about just over a month that this nominee has been before us. Ford came forward, I thought, with an act of courage. You can imagine what kind of courage it takes to come forward and make those presentations. Now other people are coming in with allegations. And it seems to me it's incumbent on the committee to give some careful and thorough consideration to what's being alleged before you move this fellow forward. And we certainly ought to have a full debate here. And since the Senate has recessed until 5 o'clock for the purpose of this committee having such a debate, I would think it's very untoward to cut that off and try to move now towards action. Pell certainly didn't do it in that time frame, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, the rationale offered not to go in open session, in closed session, so we could hear this in open session. And a number of us have even spoken about the details of what we wanted to talk about in closed session. And I want to point out that, I have an additional issue with Mr. Bolton that's emerged based on his sworn testimony, and that is his credibility, whether he told the truth to us. And I give you a case in point. If you all are wondering whether or not what he said about what he was attempting to do with the analyst versus what the analyst and all their superiors of the analyst thought he was attempting to do, then it seems to me it warrants us listening very carefully to his explanations. For example, with regard to the Mr. Smith, the pseudonym we're using for this other intelligence officer, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, if you have time I'll get the quote, that, well, he was just on his way home. The CIA was on the way home from the office. It wasn't about to go out there to get at Mr. Smith. It was just on his way home. So we asked for the log. Yesterday or the day before it comes in. Turns out he went out there in the morning. He had the meetings in the morning. He came back in at a full schedule, if he followed his schedule, written schedule, in the afternoon, not quite on the way home, and then went back home. Now, maybe that's a minor thing. That's a minor thing. But it sure doesn't comport with a guy who's trying to, just like he said when he responded to whether or not he was trying to take out Mr. Wasserman. He said, Westerman, he said, no, I wasn't trying to do that. I raised this one time. I got a response from someone in the Secretary's office. That was the end of it. That was it. And then as we went in and got more testimony, turns out it wasn't the end of it. He went back at it again, back at it again, and then back at it again. It's kind of interesting, folks. I suspect you all, I do, and I suspect all the Republicans do as well, respect the people who Bolton went to have this punitive action taken against these and other people I'll mention in a moment. I assume you respect Secretary, maybe you don't now respect Secretary Ford, but legal advisor Taft, no shrinking violent left-winger, Deputy Secretary Armitage, Secretary Powell, Deputy Director of the CIA McLaughlin, the acting chairman of the National Council on what's it called? The National Intelligence Council, Mr. Cohen. Think about this. Every single time, Mr. Bolton asked to have something done about a subordinate, throughout his career, he was overruled. Every time. His immediate superior or his parallel superior, or his parallel officer, but superior to the person in question, said, get out of my backyard. I stand by what my guy did. Taft said, I stand by what my legal advisor said, who you want to get fired. The Secretary of State said, I stand by the analyst. The Deputy Secretary of State said, I stand by. Just go down the list. Everybody said no. Now let me ask you a question, rhetorical question. Let's assume, it's not about sexual harassment, let's assume that Mr. Bolton did what was alleged and went into Kyrgyzstan and lied and said, the woman in question here has stolen government funds and she's likely to be indicted. Let's assume there was nothing else at all but that one single allegation. Just that, nothing else. No intelligence data, nothing. Would you hire a staff member who did that? Would you even hire a staff member who did that? That in representing a client went out and maliciously lied about someone doing their job. I would be dumbfounded if one of you would even hire a staff member. So maybe it doesn't matter to you. We're going to have to assume, because there's no contravening evidence, and in the case of the woman in question, we have one corroborating contemporaneous witness who says yes, that's what he did in Kyrgyzstan. I guess you don't want to hear about that, okay? No problem. We send a guy, and I hear this stuff about, he's just a tough lawyer. He's the guy you want on your side if you're in trouble. Well, I don't want my lawyer, and I don't want any lawyer, saying something to help my case by lying deliberately lying about my opponent.